This is exactly the mechanic that allows us to plant our mines quickly. This is probably the second most important use case for Magic Box for Terran. It works even with Ghost and Nukes. Useless, but interesting. Of course, it works with recalls as well. You can recall 2 armies at once. Hey guys, let's talk about the Magic Box today. I think this is a topic which is widely misunderstood by new players, and even some veteran players also don't have the full idea how this works. So basically what Magic Box is an area in which if your units are inside of it, then they will move in a formation. And that's really what it comes down to. So notice how if I have my Marines close to each other, they will move in a formation. Even though this Marine is finding some weird pathing for himself, it will end up in the same spot compared to other Marines from where he started from. So look, I'm moving to the left, and he's trying to get to the exact spot he was in, right? And this is happening every time when I move those Marines. But now look what happens when I move this Marine to the side. So he's away from those Marines now, and now when I right click, they don't keep formation. Right now what is happening, all of them want to get to this particular one spot where I clicked, right? So if I deselect this Marine, I select another one. The movement of the Marines will be much worse every time right now because of this. Because every time when I click, all those Marines are wanting to get into this one dot that I'm clicking on. So it's much better if you can move like that, right? That now there is no interruption, they don't interfere with each other, it's just much better. Something worth noting with the Magic Box is that if you have a situation like that where the units are technically in Magic Box, but there are other units in the mix, if you click somewhere for the Marines to move, notice the formation right now, so they will end up in the same formation, just without the medics being in the middle of them. Like so, 1 medics would be here and 3 kind of here. Sometimes it's not perfect because of the pathing, but the point I want to make here is that if you click right click once right now, the Marines will keep the formation that they are in right now. But of course, if they will have to spread a little bit because they have to go around the medics, and then if you click second time, they will follow the formation that is formed the moment you click move command. So look, like there's one click and there's second, and now the Marines will be like in completely different formation because they were positioned like that because they wanted to go around the medics when I clicked the second time, right? So now they keep this formation. Another thing about Magic Box is that when you click in the middle of the pack, the Marines will try to get closer, but at some point it will be impossible for them to move any further. Like you can see, they are not going. So to break something like that, if you really want them to clamp, you should click on one Marine, and then it's actually working. Because Magic Box only works when you are clicking on the terrain. It doesn't work when you are clicking on certain units, which later on will be important in case of like spells, for example. So if I want to get as close as possible, I should click on my Marine. This is very often used versus Mutas, right? You are fighting Mutas, you are moving around, and suddenly your Marines are like a little bit misplaced, for example, something like that, and you want to make them as close as possible to each other, you should click on one of your Marines. And then they can, again, be in the ball. Let's also mention the patrol mechanic with the Magic Box. So in case you patrol right here, then the formation won't be kept in the sense that they will march together. If this Marine has the closest distance, he will like be quicker than the others to reach it, and he will go back. So look, it also depends on the pathing. So actually it seems like going from there to there takes longer than from there to there for the game, which is interesting, but they are basically not marching together, right? So it's not like they keep their formation in case of patrol, it's rather that they move relative to each other. Okay, so how can we use that? I will go over many examples for Terrans and for other races, which I know that is widely used, and maybe some niche cases as well, just for fun. So our first example would be busting Sankens actually with infantry. This is something that I think many people are not aware of, but it's much nicer if you can position your units exactly in this formation. So you have those medics, which will always move in a formation right now. right? So if you position them like that, in front of the Marines, notice how Medics has 60 HP and 1 armor, so it needs 4 sunken hits to die. It's very unlikely that all 4 sunkens will attack one of your medics, so what usually you do, you just steam, press medics forward, move it with Marines, and then you attack, and medics are healing the Marines already. And it comes nicely together. And then you, of course, target the sunkens, and most of the times you will just break the exact amount of sunkens that you have a medic, so you can bust 4 sunkens with 4 medics usually. The most important use case of Magic Box for Terran is for Vultures. This is exactly the mechanic that allows us to plant our mines quickly. So look at this. Now my Vultures move information, right? Which means our ability also are used in formation. So look at that. If I just press mines here, all of them will place mines. You see that? So that's the first thing. The second one is very often when we are running around with Vultures, at some point, because of obstacles and other things, they will just split a lot, right? Because of their high speed. And now if you plant the mines, so look, now I will click mine here, and only like one Vulture is able to plant the mines. Because this is exactly what happened with Marines. All of them want to put mine in exactly this one spot, which is impossible, of course. So how do we prevent that? So the technique Terrans are using to plant mines very quickly is that you run with them, then you click on some random spot like here, and then you take small portions of your Vultures and use the magic box like that. And you see how quick that was? And that's it, and then you go away, and the job is done. Another example is in a situation like that, where the Zealot is approaching your Marines and you want to block the Zealot from Marines. Because now, look, we can make a real wall from SCVs. So if I just move the Zealot, Marines, look how I can protect my Marines with those SCVs. Of course, it's not gonna last forever, and eventually the Zealot will get to your Marines, because it's very hard to react to his movements, even if I'm not controlling the movements myself. So the player will be even better at that. But this is something you can keep in mind. For example, if you have a hole in your SCVs like that, you won't be able to fix it without controlling those two SCVs, right? Because this will never connect, which is important. When you will be on a higher level, this might be something that you actually think about, right? Because now the Zealot can go through. So to fix it, you technically have to do something like that, and only then use the wall again. Actually, I will paste a clip there where I use this in practice in one of my latest videos. We need to make our factory as well. Okay, now I can trap him, I think. Yeah. Yeah, just make the wall. Nice, that was very smooth. This is probably the second most important use case for Magic Box for Terran, which is with Wraiths. So look, my Wraiths are moving in a formation, and I don't want that, because I want to be able to shoot with every Wraith at once, and to achieve that I need them to be stacked. So what I can do is to pick any unit on the map. Let's use Probe in this example, it really doesn't matter. It just has to be away from the Wraiths. And look, now they are being stacked, because now they want to go into exact one spot where I'm clicking. So every Wraith wants to go there. If it happened that for some reason you cannot use a unit that is far away, then you can actually click on some object like mineral or gas, usually, and stack them this way. But this is of course not that reliable, because after a while they will unstack, as you can see. This example is about dropships, so I have every dropship loaded with Goliaths, and now it is possible to unload from all of the dropships if I hit in the center of the magic box, which is actually very hard. So look what will happen. Sometimes only some of the dropships will unload when you do that. So look, I will try to click at the center of the square. And look how those two actually, like, I made it work, but those two, I didn't make it work. And this is a common theme for this method. That's why it's not reliable. I don't ever use that, to be fair. But it's just funny thing to know. And it's especially hard when you don't have this center, because now you it's hard to locate where the center of the magic box is. So if I click there, again, like 2 dropships caught it, but not all of them. So it's possible, it's just extremely hard, so I don't use this method. Okay, we're approaching the fun territory, because this is not really something very useful, but it's worth knowing. So with casters, with every caster pretty much, you can do something like that. When you have this formation in Magic Box, when you will cast your spell, AoE spell, that's important, so it has to be casted on the ground, not on the unit. Then look what happens. Every vessel is kind of EMPing information as well. But if you click on one High Templar here, every rocket will go towards him. So notice how if I fly away, all the vessels will hit one spot again. If I come near, suddenly this is formation and we have the magic box. Okay, not yet, it's too far away. Now we have it. By the way, there is funny interaction. I noticed that when you EMP near the vessel, the rockets actually like start spinning around. It works even with Ghost and Nukes. Look. Now we have 4 nukes next to each other. Useless, but interesting. So for Protoss, I think the most important use case is with Dragoons, where you can keep this formation and thanks to it you can make your goons shoot at the same time, which is very important in those kind of pushes where Terran is going at you with some marines and tanks and you can confidently just walk, shoot once, go back, move a little bit. It's also important in those situations to not click too quickly with the goons. Let them keep formation by themselves. Like I click once. When I start clicking like very chaotically, sometimes they will actually unstack. So like that, like there, you see, because sometimes the pathing is weird, and even though they would end up in the same position at the end, in the middle of the movement they will turn to some direction. Then when you right click, as I showed with Marines, the different formation will be kept. So you don't want to chaotically spam. Yeah, so but the point is you can keep a line so the goons actually attack together, which is very important. Another useful example is when you would hit the bunker, right? And you have 6 goons. This is pretty common tactic against 15 CCs, for example, where they will repair with a lot of STVs the bunker, waiting for their siege and tanks. And then you can, thanks to the magic box, confidently walk up and start hitting STVs with one shot. When you see your goons being low, then you retreat and your goons keep the formation, which is very useful. A very useful trick for Protoss is to break the formation for Crsairs versus Zerg. This is exactly what Protosses do. They trap this probe between the pylons, usually behind the mineral line, and now you can stack your Crsairs, which is very important because it allows you to hit the Scourges better, and also your Crsairs are harder to split the damage from Scourges too as well. Obviously it also works with DWeb, so you can use DWeb like that. Two spurs are attacking you, you can cast DWeb like that, right? It works. In practice it's never really used because again, it's just more precise to cast it one by one, but it's possible, so worth knowing. The same thing with scouts. This is just to mention, like the Wraith, Muta and Scout have the same mechanic like every other unit. Of course, you never make those, but worth mentioning. Of course, it works with recalls as well, so look at that. You can do something like that, where you recall 2 armies at once. Also, I've never seen this being used ever. I don't know why. It's actually, this sounds like you potentially can be used, but it works just like any other area spell. Stasis obviously also works, and Maelstrom as well. So this is something that in theory should be pretty powerful, but in practice I don't see people using that because maybe it's just easier to cast storms one by one. But look, I can do something like that and cast 2 storms to wipe the entire mineral line like that, which is faster than casting 2 storms separately, but it's less precise. So maybe that's the reason people don't use that. There is one thing with mutas that people get confused about, so let's talk about that. Usually people use Overlord, right, to stack mutas, because Overlord is slow and usually far away, so you can just stack the mutas, and when the Overlord gets close, you just right click here, unselect, select another Overlord, and that's okay, right? But sometimes, especially when you have speed already, this happens, for example, versus Cloak Wraiths very often. You have your Muta stacked, but then Overlord comes too close, and they are not stacking anymore because now the Overlord is in Magic Box, right? So yeah, this is something that you have to keep in mind. Overlord cannot be too close because it doesn't work. Also the same with Queens and with Defilers. And this is actually the last thing. Pretty often in the ZVP, there is a scenario where Protoss attacks you from this side, but then he switches his mind and goes the other way around, and you would like to reburrow your Lurkers, but this is very annoying because every time you unburrow, then you have to manually split them. But look, if you have those Lurkers in the magic box already, then you just right-click here, and they will keep the formation. It doesn't matter that the pathing is weird right now, but they will end up in the exact position relative to each other they were starting from. So I think that might be very useful actually in ZVP, but I don't think I ever saw anybody does that. Okay guys, that's it for this video. I think that's everything that I know about Magic Box. From now on you can send this link to anybody who ever asks about it. So thanks for watching and see you next time, bye bye.